We've all heard of mummies. They're ancient dried up corpses that usually haunt pyramids and ancient tombs. But have you heard of a honey mummy? How about a human honeysuckle? Mellification is the process where dead bodies are transformed into human rock candy by steeping them in honey. You heard that right. Tales of mellified men stem from the Benkeo Gangmu, an exotic medical journal curated in the 16th century by the Chinese apothecary of Li Shizhen. Mellification, as described in the journal, was practiced by the men of ancient Arabia. It is described as a self-sacrificial process that would typically begin before death. Approaching the end of their lives, men who were set to essentially be candied would eat, drink, and even bathe in nothing but honey, and not long after would start to urinate, sweat out, and even defecate honey. Eventually, when they succumbed to this sugary diet, their bodies were placed in stone coffins where they were submerged in yet even more, you guessed it, honey. This was not a quick process, however, as it would take a couple of centuries before the mellified man was considered ripe for consumption. Yep, that's right, consumption. These honey mummies would later be pulled out of their tombs to be broken up into smaller confectionery fragments, later being sold in bazaars at a high price. Like I said, rock candy. Considered by many to be an exotic elixir of sorts, mellified men reportedly had remarkable healing capabilities for broken limbs and open wounds. However, in her book Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers, author Mary Roach points out that the popularity of some of these human elixirs probably had less to do with the purported effective ingredient than with the base.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
In other words, the honey by itself probably could have done the trick just the same. And she's right. Honey has for a long time been documented as possessing antimicrobial properties and wound healing activity. A study from the Asian Pacific Journal of Tropical Biomedicine found that this is due to the fact that the enzymatic production within bees naturally produces hydrogen peroxide. You know, that shit that adults would pour on your knee scrape right after lying to your face that it wouldn't hurt. It offers antibacterial activity, maintains a moist wound condition, and its high viscosity creates a protective barrier for preventing infection. Amina Harris, executive director of the Honey and Pollination Center at UC Davis, told Smithsonian Magazine that honey in its natural form is very low in moisture. Very few bacteria or microorganisms can survive in an environment like that. They just die. They're smothered by it, essentially. So why combine it with dead bodies? Well, mummies were considered to be a popular medicine from the 12th to 18th century in Europe. Mummy powder would be obtained by raiding ancient tombs and stealing the cold, dried-up corpses hidden within. Once a corpse was obtained, it would be ground into dust and could be mixed with other substances to treat headaches, stomach ulcers, and even tumors. For the record, humans have been using odd body parts as experimental medicine for as long as aches and pains have been around. Human fat was thought to cure gout if rubbed on the afflicted area, and in Rome, the blood and liver of the young were thought to cure epilepsy. Unfortunately, the idea that ground-up corpse powder could somehow be medicinal was the result of a large misunderstanding.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Bitumen is a natural petrochemical that was used in ancient times to treat arthritis, and today, we know it as the asphalt we use on our roads. The Persian word for wax, mumia, was used to describe bitumen. However, Egyptians used the word mumia to describe the resin they used on corpses during the mummification process. Since the word for these two different substances were both mumia, bitumen became associated with mummies, and the curative powers of Arabian wax became synonymous with Egyptian corpse powder. So back to mellification. Honey is a natural preservative and doesn't really go bad, so it makes sense that we looked towards it for an immortality of sorts. But whether or not adding cadavers really makes all that much of a difference is largely debatable. Eating parts of the dead seem to have faded into history and doesn't really sound like the best practice anymore. But what do you think of mellification? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next Friday. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Bluelavasix to stay up to date on the channel or to just say hello. And as always, thanks for watching.